We come now to the third of the great holy days in the church year, Pentecost. In ancient Judaism, Pentecost came 50 days after Passover. The word Pente means 50 in both Latin and in Greek. In Judaism of Jesus' day, Pentecost also marked the end of the spring wheat festival. So it was a day of celebration. If the crops had been good, God was to be praised and there would be grain enough for bread for the year. And so, since it was a major feast day, devout Jews from all over the Mediterranean world would come to worship in the temple in Jerusalem. The town would be alive. The town would be abuzz with all sorts of dialects and other languages, but their common denominator would be their Jewish faith. We are told that on that particular Sabbath day, those who had been in Jesus' circle gravitated to that house on a side street in Jerusalem. The downstairs was reputed to be a shrine to King David. But the upstairs was a large room. And it was there that Jesus had celebrated his Last Supper with the disciples. It was in that room that the disciples hid when Jesus was crucified, terrified that they would be next. And it was in that upstairs room that Jesus appeared to those disciples and poured out his Spirit on them. That room, we are told, on that first morning, recounted in our lesson, held 120 souls. The official fire marshal seating capacity for this place is 76. If you take out the pews and put in folding chairs and get real friendly with your neighbor, we could get 120 folks in here. So think of that room, something about the size of this, maybe a little larger. 120 souls gathered together to celebrate. They evidently celebrated well. They got noisy. They got so noisy that the folks gathered on the street outside wondering what was going on and came to the conclusion that they had tapped into the new wine. I'm afraid to tell you that the wine we use is not the new wine. It's not very good wine, but it's wine. 120 souls gathered together. If you paid attention to our first lesson this morning, that story from Genesis, it comes from Genesis' attempt to explain the differences between various cultures and various peoples. About midway through Genesis is the story of all humankind gathered together in one place and coming to the conclusion that their common purpose was to become godly. And so they began to build a tower to reach into the heavens so that they could be godly. It's a great story. It explains one of the major characteristics of us human beings, our desire to be somebody, our desire to be in control, our desire to make things happen the way we want them to happen. So if we can only get high enough to heaven, then we can control all sorts of things. I've known a few folks who are still trying that. The story says that God was not pleased, and so He scattered those folks. Scattered them into different lands, scattered their language. It's Genesis' way of explaining the way things are. Different people, different cultures, different languages. But it all stems from that basic desire to be godlike. I suspect that that desire has not gone away. We are still playing it out. That Genesis story is an attempt to explain, first of all, our human condition. Explain our ethnic origins, our nationalities, our fundamental desire to play God. That's not something of the past. Pick up this morning's paper. Just read the front page. There'll be all sorts of stories in there of folks who want to be in charge, who want to be godlike, who want to rule other people, to have the one-upsmanship, whether it's based on politics, ethnicity, gender. It's still at work. It's still at work. But in that room on that first Pentecost morning, something different happened. Something different happened. People were changed. People had their lives interrupted and transformed. Language was no longer a barrier of separation. People's hearts were set on fire. When was the last time your heart was set on fire and it wasn't due to what you had to eat or drink? No, much deeper than that. Much deeper. The things that separate us even to this day began to crumble in that room on that morning. The barriers of nationality, race, sex, politics were all overcome. Recounts of it could only be summed up: our hearts were set on fire. Our hearts were set on fire. I believe that all of my heart that still occurs. That it is still possible for that kind of spirit to move among people and set hearts on fire. And when that spirit erupts, at least three things take place. The first is community is created. Those people who were from different backgrounds, different cultures, different tribes, separated by those ancient taboos about sex and religion, those people had their hearts set on fire, and the result was They became a community. The Holy Spirit manifests itself in community. We exist to love and value the one who has created each and every one of us, that we are related. We are in communion when we are in a community. And because of who we are, and more importantly, whose we are, our primary life together is lived out in community. No Lone Ranger Christians. Those folks who say, well, you know, on Sunday morning I can set aside a little time for meditation. I can be kind to folks. Try to do what's right. But they're not in community. They're not in community. It makes no difference the size of the community. What we are doing here this morning is the same thing that 500 people are doing gathered together in the cathedral in Atlanta. It's the same community. And when we are in community, we learn to commune with each other and with God. So the Holy Spirit creates, first of all, community, and the purpose of the community is first and foremost to worship. Oh, we do great things, we do outreach, we support all manner of things to help our neighbors and our neighborhoods. First and foremost, it stems from the community coming together to worship, because it is in worship that we acknowledge who we are and whose we are. And hopefully that Spirit sets our hearts on fire. Worship is at the heart of what community is about. I grew up in a parish where 3 Sundays out of 4 the service was morning prayer. You had to look through the prayer book very diligently to find communion, or show up accidentally on the 4th Sunday. It wasn't until I was a freshman in college and went to a different church where communion was the main service each and every Sunday. Remember those old terms about high church and low church? If you had communion more than once a month, you were high church. Those people came together and had their hearts set on fire so that they could eat together and go out and change the world together. The third thing I want to say about the presence of the Holy Spirit that we are celebrating on this Pentecost Sunday is that I believe the main evidence of the power and presence of the Spirit is in something called courage. Courage. Where the Spirit sets someone's heart on fire and supported by others in their community, they find the courage to be who God created them to be. Every soul here longs for courage. Courage to get up in the morning and go face the world. Courage to speak out about what you believe, and more importantly, what you have come to believe because of who and whose you are. greatest manifestation, I believe, of the Holy Spirit in the community is the courage to be who God created us to be. So the good news, gospel, the good news is that the one who has created you and me and loves and forgives us is present somehow in this room on this Pentecost Sunday. And so may the blessing of God the Father and God the Son and God the Holy Spirit abide with each and every one of you forever. Amen.